Welcome back, guys. I'm super pumped for today. We're going to be talking about the second part of our series of anatomy of the skin. Today, we're diving deep into the dermis, so stay tuned. Okay, so you probably already watched the first segment that talked about the epidermis, and I was pretty easy breezy with that one. I don't want to bore you guys too much. I can totally geek out and get super scientific with you, but I want to keep you excited, right? So today we're going to talk about the dermis. For those of you who didn't see the first segment, I'm going to give you a quick little brief overview. So I always like to use my fingers because that's just the way my mind works. So our skin is broken down into two main sections. So you've got your epidermis and then you've got your dermis. Your epidermis is all like the dead skin for the most part. It's like different layers of that. But if you think about this outer part right here, this is what you see. This is your face, right? This is your skin on your outer body. This is your epidermal dermal junction. It's like this wavy band that connects the two. And then your dermis that we're gonna talk about today is the live tissue. So you've got your papillary dermis and you've got your reticular dermis. So it's broken down into two sections. It's 20% and 80%. The top 20% is pretty vascular, and then the bottom 80% is where all of like the big stuff lives, right? You've got these giant collagen building blocks, right? That's what gives you the structure to your skin. That's what holds the skin up, right? And then you've got your elastin fibers. Those are like these like fibers that just kind of weave through here. Super depressing fact. When you want to talk about elastin fibers. So women, our fibers go like this. So you can start thinking about cellulite, which is that fatty tissue underneath. It starts poking through and it weakens our elastin fibers. Men, which is some bullshit, their fibers are like woven like this. So super, super tight. So it's pretty rare that you see men with cellulite. They do get it, but not to the extent that women do because of that. So here's to you, men. Anyway, so let's go back into the dermis. So you've got that 20% at the top, and then you've got the 80% on the bottom with all your collagen, right? So most of what estheticians do in a treatment room really stays within that epidermis. You're really not penetrating down to the dermis. When you do start penetrating down to the dermis by really deep medical grade peels and medium depth medical grade peels, and we'll actually talk about what those mean in the spa world versus med spa world in just a moment, you're really staying towards the top of that dermis. Your only time you're going to the bottom part of that dermis is when you're doing really aggressive treatments. You're doing light-based therapy where the light is penetrating to that depth, or if you're doing microneedling and the actual needle depth is penetrating down to that bottom. Microneedling is one of the coolest freaking things ever, and we'll actually talk about that in another segment, and I'll show you guys how it actually penetrates all the way down and what it's doing. It's super rad, but just know that your dermis is that live tissue. Why is this important to know? Because if you go somewhere and they're like, oh yeah, we penetrate all the way down to the dermis, they're probably full of shit. Most things do not, unless it's actually puncturing the skin, right? So if they say, oh, this is gonna change your skin so much, one treatment, bullshit. It's going to stay on the top of that epidermis. So it's going to make your skin look superficially better for a very short period of time. This is why it's really important to understand the depth of your epidermis and your dermis. So you know when you're doing treatments, what are they actually doing? Are they penetrating deep enough to make actual lifelong changes to the structure of your collagen? Or is it superficial exfoliation that just makes you look good for a couple days? Right? So I wanted to explain to you guys the difference between the epidermis and the dermis. Most of the time, you will not touch your dermis. You won't do anything to your dermis unless you're going to med spas or doctor's offices. An esthetician, I don't care what state she is in, cannot penetrate down to your dermis unless she works under the direction of a medical supervisor. So most med spas that have a medical director, they now have that authority to be able to penetrate that deep, right? So when you start thinking about the dermis and why does that matter to even penetrate that deep, why do we need to, right? So your epidermis is what you see, but everything that's in your dermis feeds into your epidermis, right? So if you think of your collagen as these like building blocks, right? So I like to think of them as like tall buildings. As we get older, they start to kind of fall apart and disintegrate. Think of like old shitty brick buildings in like New York, right? They're starting to kind of fall apart. If you think of a child's or a teenager or someone very young and youthful skin, their collagen building blocks are like skyscrapers. They're like strong, they're thick, they're tough. So that's what makes stronger, healthier skin. So why is it important to understand what's going on with your dermis? Because that's what's gonna make your skin healthy. When you start to see people that have a lot of loss of elasticity, That's from their dermis. They were not getting treatments. People that get consistent treatments, you're putting nutrients that go down into that epidermis to feed into the dermis. And then vice versa, the dermis feeds into the epidermis to make everything work in cohesion. So you can have a really nice epidermis, but if your dermis is shit, it's all for nothing, right? So I always like to refer to people that have used like Retin-A for like years and years and years. If you've used Retin-A for a very long time, it's very exfoliating. So your skin is like super, super smooth, but your dermis is fucked because it's a lot of inflammation and you're sending inflammatory signals over and over and over. So yes, their skin's pretty smooth superficially, but they have totally screwed their acid mantle. They've totally screwed that epidermal-dermal junction that really bands everything together by creating a lot of inflammation. I know I'm kind of going off on a rant here because there's a lot to discuss and there's a lot to understand. So this is why, you guys, it's really important to find somebody that knows what the hell they're doing. I know you guys hear me bash skin influencers all the time, and skin influencers, I am not trying to like demonize you by any means, but you have to understand, as somebody who has spent their entire career in this industry helping people love what they see in the mirror every day, it is heartbreaking when people come in and they've damaged their skin because of some stupid shit they read. You have to understand the skin is not some quick, easy fix. You have to understand it. You have to know how to fix it. You have to know ingredients. You have to know what you're working with. And you've got to go to somebody that knows their shit, right? So there's nothing wrong to go to day spas and get a facial. They're amazing. When you want to make real structural changes that are going to take you lifelong, you have to understand treatments are required, and you need to understand when you're doing something that's super deep and aggressive and what the effects can be, short-term as well as long-term, and what the effects are going to be when you just do like facials that stay at the top part of your epidermis. There's a huge difference, you guys, and it can make a huge difference to what your skin looks like now, what it looks like a year from now, what it looks like 10 years from now. So just wanted to give you guys a little bit of that info when it comes to the dermis. I know it can be kind of boring and whatnot, but thank you for staying with me. Please hit subscribe down below. Leave lots of comments, you guys. Leave me all the questions. I am ready. I am here for you.